Welcome to the Rock is George podcast, episode 22. I'm your host, George Dion. Thanks for visiting anchor.fm/rockisgeorge to stream the podcast on your favorite streaming platform. We also have rockisgeorge.com to find out the latest episodes of the podcast and my work contributing at metalexpressradio.com. You can check out our Facebook page, and I've started posting the podcasts on YouTube. You can click over from the Facebook page. I got another great interview for you. His name is Roy Cathey. His current band is called The Fifth. They recently released their self-titled EP. Fantastic, classic, old school rock record, and it's an old school rock record for a reason. Vocalist Roy Cathey. He started out in the hard rock band Cold Sweat in the 1990s. Their debut album Breakout is fantastic if you hadn't heard it. If you hadn't heard about Cold Sweat, it was the band formed by former Keel guitarist Marc Ferrari. Cold Sweat went on to open for the likes of Ronnie James Dio and other late 80s, early 90s heavyweights. Unfortunately, they were plagued by a label that didn't know what to do with them. In 2001, Roy formed The Fifth. They've gone through some sound changes before arriving where they're at today with their self-titled EP. And Roy and I talk all about the EP, his time in Cold Sweat, and more. So here he is, Roy Cathey. If I knew absolutely nothing about The Fifth, how would you describe the band's music to me?
I would describe The Fifth as one of those bands that you would like to have as the soundtrack of a bar fight. We're a little bit of a raunchy, we're a little gritty, we're just kind of like that soundtrack to real life. You know, we've got harder elements, we've got softer elements, we've got the peaks, we've got the valleys, we've got music of life. That's pretty much what The Fifth is.
I'd agree with that completely, and I heard a lot of that on your self-titled EP, which came out on September 24th on Vanity Music Group. Let's talk about the single that you've released, because you got a video that goes along with it. Shake Little Sister. Content-wise, I'm assuming this is about a stripper?
There are elements of strippers, strip clubs, you know, that kind of element is there. But mostly it's pretty much just a story of a bunch of guys that kind of go into a town and just kind of take it over and make it their own. And, you know, there just happens to be one lovely young lady that happens to financially benefit from their willingness to party. So, you know, it's just one of those good time party rock and roll songs.
Absolutely. And you have a really professional looking music video to go along with it. You actually had a director, I believe, for this.
Yes. We have a very young and talented director named Jaden Frost that I got to work with finally. And a great little backstory about Jaden. He's a very super young and talented director who comes from North Carolina. And he approached me about 10 years ago when he was just a kid doing his first skateboard videos and just getting into making videos. He come up to me one night after a show that The Fifth was playing at a local venue opening for a national act and gave me his whole pitch how he'd, you know, want to shoot a music video for us and this, that, and the other thing. And he said that I was very respectful and I listened to his pitch and I wished him the best. And I said, who knows, young man, maybe. Fast forward 10 years later, I'm working with this kid. He's done a great job. He's done tons of music videos for other bands. I've followed his career and, you know, I knew he was the guy to kind of bring this song to life. He has his forte and his gimmick, so to speak, is he takes these songs and he turns them into little mini movies. He listens to them and he takes the band's image and everything into account and he makes a mini movie, and that's what it comes out as. And super talented guy, and it was great that we finally got to work with him, and I hope this propels him to some bigger and better things.
Absolutely. How long does it take to film a 3-minute video like yours?
This video in particular, you know, I've been in the music industry for, you know, my entire life, you know, 30 plus. And this one was the first 2-day shoot. This was a 2-day video shoot. And it, you know, the days were somewhere between 12 to 14 hours. Mm-hmm. But it was 2 days. It was, you know, we had the basic script of what we wanted to go for and the shooting order. turned out to be something that we just kind of had to roll and move with the punches, because we were literally filming in a open biker bar. I mean, this was not a set. This wasn't anything but a biker bar that I found in North Carolina on the off-road somewhere, in rural North Carolina off of Interstate 95. And it's a biker bar. So we literally had, especially on the first day of shooting, we had anywhere between 5 to 6 different biker clubs roll through there. You know, I mean, it's when you see the video, and if you take that into account, at any given time when we were doing a take, there were fucking these big burly biker fucking guys in there watching us do this shit. You know what I mean? And they were great people. It was a fantastic experience. And I got to give the pitch and the shout out to Pitcher's Bar in Benson, North Carolina. We want to thank them for opening their doors to us for 2 days. So Pitcher's Bar, Benson, North Carolina. They got a hell of a buffet. They got a hell of a buffet on Sunday, brother. Let me tell you.
Sunday brunch is like the thing down south, isn't it?
Hey man, look, food is the thing down south. Yeah, that's just the southern thing, you know.
So I think a lot of people will want to know, who is the girl in the box?
Man, that is a very talented actress that was brought in by the director Jaden Frost. Her name is Ariana Tysinger. So anyway, yeah, Ariana Tysinger, very talented actress. And I tell you, man, I got a hell of a deal on her. I asked, you know, Jaden brought her in, and she did the dancer stuff, she did the contortionist stuff, and she did the freak show stuff. She did, you know, she's a triple threat, man. And she, it turned out to add an element of fun and just what the fuck to the video. So.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Do you guys have another single coming out soon?
Not soon. You know, we're going to ride Shake Little Sister right now. We think right now we want that to be the, with it being the first single and it just coming out and still just kind of trying to come out of this pandemic. We're going to try and ride that as a single into 2022 and see where our momentum is. And then hopefully, if we're rolling good, put out a second video and single, and it'll more than likely be Home, the ballad. It'll be Home, the ballad.
Okay. So you're going to probably ride the EP for a while. EP's not really going to work into like a full album.
Yes. Our long-term plans, you know, I mean, The Fifth has been something, a project, a labor of love, my musical vehicle for the past, 20 years. It's been a long time since we had put out any new music. Life, member changes, it kept us from putting new music out. So once I finally got this current lineup together, which is just the best lineup that I've ever had of just the best musicians and best people, I wanted to capture that energy, capture that chemistry, get some new music out. And we want to put something out in 2022. Justin, our guitarist, is already writing. And we'll put something out next year, later in 2022. But we wanted to get the EP out there just to kind of let people know that, man, we're still fucking here, and I still got the thing going. It's been a long haul to get a new product out. So I'm happy to finally have this out, and I'm very proud of it.
And you mentioned you've had lineup changes, and it's been since 2009 since you last put out new music. Your music's changed a bit since then. I would say back then it was a little darker, a little more alternative, I'd say, and now you're a little more straight up rock and roll, right?
Absolutely. You nailed it completely on the head. The earlier Fifth material was much more on the modern rock side, that alternative rock side, that kind of thing that was in at the early 2000s and stuff. It was drop D tuning, the Godsmacky, Creed-ish kind of, Creed. We walked that line. It was like a Godsmack meets Creed, some of the earlier Fifth material. And this one, we just kind of, I finally decided to embrace my Cold Sweat past and my 80s roots. And Justin, my guitarist, is, even though he's in his mid 30s, he's an old soul, and he grew up idolizing those shredders. And, he writes that way. So when he brought me these songs, we were just like, fuck it, man. Let's write a fucking 80s influenced party rock fucking EP. Let's put this out. Let's put out a great ballad. Let's give people a taste of what we are now. And people are very being very receptive to it.
So you got the new lineup, you got new music, you also got a new label, Vanity Music Group. How did that deal come along for the band?
I've been working. My personal manager, Dave Tedder, is also the manager of the band, and he's the president of Vanity Music. I've been working with Dave Tedder for many years, and he's a trusted friend. And you know as well as I do, the music industry is different now. And, they're not throwing out those deals of yesteryear. And whatever record deals they are putting out there, the bands are still having to cover 80 to 90 to fucking all the costs as it is. You know what I'm saying? Me and Dave, luckily with the trust and the relationship that we've had through the years, we felt it best to keep this within the family and keep it close to the vest. And, Dave was there for us, and he's always believed in me. So we're thankful and happy that Vanity got hooked up with Sony Orchard. We've got great distribution, and we're lucky. We're the masters of our own destiny, and I'd rather be in that position right now. I mean, of course, I would love to have a huge bankroll of money behind us to be able to do all the things that they used to do. Let me put that in parentheses, used to do, but they don't do that anymore. If I could win the lottery, I could achieve the same thing because I have the money to put it to the publicist, to the this, to the that, to the that, to the that, buy onto this tour, buy onto that tour. And I guarantee you, brother, within 6 months, everybody would be talking about the fifth. That's the way the entertainment business is. So yeah, I'm happy to be with Vanity. I've got a manager and somebody that I trust, and we're doing it the honest, hard, old fashioned way.
Rock and roll is kind of the bastard child of the music industry these days anyway, so you got to work your way hard anyway.
Oh my God, I thought I was the only person that said that. Man, I say that all the time. We're the redheaded stepchild. we were left behind, okay?
Absolutely.
And now rock and roll has really moved back to that underground, if kind of clique of fans. You've got the old schoolers that are still fucking believing in the music of yesteryear, and they're even starting to pick up the torch of the Crazy Licks and the bands that kind of carry that torch along of that flavor that they love. But there's still the subgenres and the kids that like the heavier stuff. We're out there. Rock is out there. It's just not being given a seat at the table because the industry, once again, air quotes, the industry has decided that that's where we belong, is in the back seat and underground. But as well as I do, every, 10, 20 years, the music industry and culture and society takes a big steaming enema dump, and something comes along, and it'll be another Guns N' Roses, and it'll propel rock back to something, of like, oh my God, from out of nowhere, this gritty street sound, you know what I mean? And I'm going to be 70, and I'm going to be like, oh my fucking God, really? So, I mean, that's the, the circle of life.
They try to float it out there by putting a guitar in Machine Gun Kelly's hand and saying it's rock and roll, but we all know it's the same drivel that they've been giving us.
We all know. And I also feel bad, and this is being completely frank and honest, I feel bad for the country music industry because that's been bastardized now as well. Because anytime you take art and you turn it into a commercial product that you want to package and create and shove out there and push it down the throat of as many bubbas as you fucking can, you're gonna water it down. And now, man, I'm here to fucking tell you, you know as well as I do, though even you might not be a fan, and I'm not even a fan of the genre, but the country music that I listened to when I was a kid from my dad and my grandparents, it ain't the same country music.
Today's country has a hip hop beat in the background. That's what I hear. It's programmed drums. They're almost rapping themselves.
They've taken the soul out of country music now. So
right.
It's like whenever the music industry, air quotes, gets involved with anything, you see what happens. It becomes bastardized. And you know, you listen, brother, let me tell you, and I'm not saying there's not some great country artists out there and some great songs and some great songwriters. That's not what I'm saying. But right. Man, I tell you what, I will sit down and listen to a Johnny Cash album or a Willie Nelson album or a Waylon Jennings album and the Outlaws way before I'd sit down and listen to anything from any of the guys now. So
and definitely some Conway Twitty.
Oh, man, what are you talking about? Just for the suits alone and that hair. I mean, come on.
Absolutely. Hey, guys, Rock is George here with the Rock is George podcast Whiskey Break. For this whiskey break, I have kind of an unknown bourbon. It's certainly not a household name. It's certainly not a name that gets kicked around in advertisements and stuff like that. In fact, I don't recall ever seeing it, and I didn't know much about it, but it's aged in one of my favorite casks, so I was like, I'll give it a try. The name of the whiskey is Minor Case. It's a rye whiskey that's aged in a sherry cask barrel. It's made by the Limestone Branch Distillery. Now, I didn't know it at first, but the Limestone Branch Distillery also makes one of my favorite bourbons, Yellowstone Select. That is a fantastic bourbon, if you can find it. It's kind of tough to get your hands on in some places. But anyway, back to Minor Case. Like I said, it's a rye whiskey. It's 45% alcohol by volume. Sherry cask finished, which gives it that sweetness I like in my whiskeys and scotches and bourbons. I don't care much for sherry itself, but it's something about the cask that makes the whiskey taste good. I hadn't seen too many rye whiskeys aged in a sherry cask, so I thought this would be interesting. It's about $20. No, before we give it a roll, let me give you Minor Case's description of what it is. It's earthy with sweet sherry on the nose, has a hint of sweet butterscotch in the taste on your palate, and the finish is smooth with hints of dried fruits. Let's see if it holds up. I don't get a lot of smell from it. I don't get too many big flavors. I'd say it's very light. Maybe a bit of fruitiness, but sweetness from the sherry for sure. Maybe a little bit of rye at the end, but certainly not on the palate. It's not bad. I certainly wouldn't put it up amongst, my top shelf stuff of what I like, but it's certainly a good entry into rye if you haven't had rye whiskey before. Like I said, it's inexpensive, so you can't beat a good tasting rye for $20. So let's get back to Roy Cathey of the band The Fifth. Is The Fifth going to be able to tour this year? Is it looking good, looking bad?
As somebody that has been in the music industry, this pandemic just, it not only shut everything down, it put people out of business. I mean, I know personally of at least 4 clubs in North Carolina, rock clubs, small to medium-sized rock clubs, the kind of clubs that are the heartbeat of all of it, closed down. And it's going to be a slow and steady slog to get it back. We're starting to work with some agencies and starting to book some shows in February of next year. Going to go through Deep South, through South Carolina, Georgia, Florida for a couple of weeks. And a couple weeks later, we're going to go up north. We've got some touring plans, and it's going to be slow and steady.
Let's hit the time machine here a little bit. Let's go back to the days where rock radio ruled and the checks were a little bigger. In 1990, you were a member of Cold Sweat with Marc Ferrari from Keel. Your
Hmm?
debut album was Breakout. I was listening to it again last night. Solid album, solid album.
Thank you,
Uh,
sir.
what do you remember about making this album back in 1990?
Well, I mean, if you know my background, I was a kid from North Carolina. I grew up singing in the bars from the age of 15, and by the time I got discovered down in Florida, I was singing with my bar band Gibraltar, and a phone call and a friend, and I'm on an airplane, and I'm signing a record deal in 3 days, and I'm in Cold Sweat. I mean, the movie Rockstar in a lot of ways was a similar kind of thing that happened to me. It was really fast and it was a really quick ride. It was amazing. I was lucky enough to catch the end of an era
Right.
because Cold Sweat, even though, we were signed to the worst label possible. MCA did just the worst job. They dropped the ball in every way, shape, or form. But I think we're one of the last, not one of the last bands, but by comparison of today, we got a recording advance, we got a publishing advance, we got a merchandising advance. We actually got paid to make the record. You know what I mean? We were still in debt, but you know what I mean. It was
Yeah.
it was a whole different era. We rode on tour buses. We flew to Europe to go do festivals with opening, for Aerosmith and Whitesnake and Ronnie, and it's just it's different now. And it was amazing to be able to, as a kid from North Carolina, literally live your dreams. And I'll never forget it, and I'll always be proud of it. And us getting the chance to do the Monsters of Rock cruise in 2020 like we did and reunite, and it was instant magic. I mean, it's like we hadn't seen each other and been in the same room for 27 years, and we walked in there, and from the first note, it was just time had just vanished, except for the smell of Bengay and bottles of Motrin all over the guitar.
You mentioned you guys, Cold Sweat opened for Ronnie James Dio back in the day, and I noticed that you had a posting on Facebook that he was kind of a mentor to you. How did that kind of relationship form and develop?
Well, we were managed by Wendy Dio, so we that automatically put us in Ronnie's orbit. And when I came into the project, I was the guy that replaced Oni because he went off to join Lynch Mob. So when I came into the project, the wheels were already in motion. We were already signed. The producer was picked out. The songs were already written. I wrote lyrics on one of the songs and got, my imprint on the record that way. But for the most part, everything was already moving. I was able to jump in and hang on. So that put me in Ronnie's orbit right away from the very beginning. And he was incredibly kind and gracious and supportive. And, when we played our first big show in LA, it was the Roxy. And the band had been looking for a singer for 6 months, and every singer in LA had tried out for the gig. And literally every single singer that tried out was in that audience that night. The label people were there. All these people were there. It was just huge fucking pressure. Let's see the kid that got the gig. We came out there and we just fucking killed it. I mean, we killed it. And I remember Wendy was in the audience and she brought Ronnie to the show. And I'll never forget her bringing Ronnie up to the dressing room and him coming up to me and going, "You've got a hell of a voice on you, young man." And they took a picture of me soon afterwards, and it was me and Ronnie, and it's on my Facebook page somewhere. And you could see the gleam on my face and the shit-eating grin that, what had just happened. So it was pretty magical times for sure.
Awesome memory to have. Probably one of the few guys I never had the chance to meet, but Everybody's got great stories. I talked to Chaz West. He was another guy. Ronnie kind of took him under his wing when he was in Bonham and kind of gave him advice and stuff like that. Did Ronnie give you any advice about the music industry and the scene at the time?
Well, the thing about Ronnie is he was great with the fans. And if I learned one thing from Ronnie, it was watching him with the fans and how he treated them. And he always made sure to make it clear that, it's the fans that put you where you are. So, if I could take away anything my time from Ronnie, it was his gracious, kind, and humble nature with the fans. And that's what I learned from Ronnie. And I've, definitely tried to continue to be that way my entire career. It's a fan driven business. And, look, I've got my detractors, like everybody does. But, for me, it's always been about the fans and the music. I might piss you off from time to time, but the music I make is for everyone, and it's for you and in good spirits.
A remastered version of Breakout Cold Sweat, or a re-release version of Cold Sweat's Breakout, is available through the current record label that you're on now, right?
Yes. Dave Tedder and Vanity also picked that one up. That was the start of Dave's label and his whole thing. He was doing reissues, and I gotta give Dave credit, man, because look, MCA sucked. I mean, they suck so fucking bad. They couldn't even find the shit.
Right.
Dave approached him to do the reissue and all the stuff and had everything ready, and fucking MCA couldn't even in their archives couldn't even look it up. They had it cataloged wrong. And Dave luckily, developed a relationship with Marc Ferrari, who through his company Master Source worked close with Universal Music, who had bought out MCA. So Marc was able to get into the system, and he still couldn't find it. But him being in there was able to find out that they had it listed under Breakout and not Cold Sweat, and 2 words and not 1 word. You know what I mean? It was just this stupid fucking God, what's the word? Bureaucratic bullshit, layers of corporate fucking yaya that it took him forever. So hats off to Dave Tedder. It literally took him like over a year to dig through that shit. Seriously, to get it even released.
Right.
The Cold Sweat stuff, you couldn't find it unless it was on eBay for like $100.
Oh, of course.
And then so Dave really worked hard to get that out there. And we're happy to announce that it's gone aluminum. We're very happy about that.
It's gone aluminum. Good.
Yeah. we were shooting for 10, but
you got aluminum.
We got aluminum.
Well, it really needs to go vinyl. That's what I think. It really needs to go vinyl.
Talk to Mr. Tedder. I could not agree with you more.
So the new EP is self-titled. It's the 5th. You're the 5th. It's a great sounding EP. I love it. That's all I got for you today, Roy. I wish you the best of luck going forward.
Man, I really appreciate it, man. And before I go, thanks for having me on, and thanks for me. Man, I say this to all you guys. If it wasn't for guys like you, the true fans, the people that are out there, you're holding the banner of rock and roll up there. You're keeping the spirit alive. You're keeping the music alive. You're exposing people to new bands. You're holding on to the past. You're opening up doors to the future. So hats off and thanks to you, man. Appreciate everything that you do, man. I really do appreciate it.
And I appreciate the kind words. Thanks, man. Once again, I want to thank Roy Cathey for coming on the Rock is George podcast. You can check out The Fifth through their Facebook page, facebook.com/thefifthmusic. Be sure to stream their new self-titled EP on all streaming platforms. I also want to thank Dave Tedder for making this interview possible. Dave, let's get that Cold Sweat album out on vinyl. I'll line up to be the first to purchase it. Now, we got some great episodes of the Rock is George podcast heading your way. You've been great. I've been George Dion. I'll see you again soon.